The skies above Seoul darkened as the massive Keldari ships entered Earth's atmosphere. These weren't clouds or storms. They were vessels larger than anything humans had ever built. People stopped in the streets, looking up with open mouths and wide eyes. Traffic halted. Phones came out to record the moment that would change human history forever. Dr. Park stood on the roof of the Seoul National University Observatory, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. He had detected the unusual signals 3 weeks ago. The strange radiation patterns and gravitational anomalies couldn't be explained by any natural phenomenon. He had sent his findings to every major space agency and government, but they had dismissed his concerns. Now, they couldn't ignore the truth hovering above their cities. They're positioning themselves over major population centers. Dr. Park said into his phone, recording his observations. Not just military installations. This suggests either a show of force or he couldn't finish the thought. The first broadcasts came within hours. The Keldari appeared on every screen worldwide. Tall beings with iridescent skin and 4 arms. They spoke perfect Earth languages, explaining they were travelers from a distant star system, seeking peaceful contact and cultural exchange. In the emergency meeting at the Korean Ministry of Defense, Dr. Park slammed his fist on the table. Their technology is at least several centuries beyond ours, he argued. Why would they come here except to take what we have? Director Lee adjusted his glasses and frowned at Park. The Americans and Chinese have already agreed to welcome the Keldari delegates. We cannot be the only nation refusing diplomatic relations. At least increase military readiness, Park pleaded, and risk appearing hostile. That would be reckless, Lee replied. Besides, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already. The world watched as Keldari representatives met with the United Nations. They brought gifts, medical technology that could cure several types of cancer, energy devices that produced clean power, and agricultural methods that could triple crop yields. World leaders smiled and shook hands with the visitors. Stock markets soared. Religious leaders debated the theological implications. Children added new aliens to their games. Dr. Park didn't sleep. He worked tirelessly, analyzing every piece of information about the Keldari. Something wasn't right. Their story had holes. They claimed to come from a star system that, based on his calculations, couldn't support their biology. They spoke about peace while their ships maintained positions that could strike any point on Earth within minutes. 3 weeks after first contact, Park finally found something concrete. He detected energy readings from the underside of the Keldari ships. Weapons charging. He called Director Lee immediately. You need to see this data now, Park insisted. I'm busy with the Technology Transfer Committee, Lee replied. The Keldari are showing us how to implement their medical systems. That's exactly what they want, to keep us distracted while they prepare. Lee sighed. Park, you've become obsessed. Take some time off. This is humanity's greatest moment. Park hung up and stared at his computer screen. If no one would listen, he would have to act alone. He began downloading all his research and contacting the few colleagues who shared his suspicions. Exactly 3 months after their arrival, the Keldari showed their true intentions. Park was driving to meet Professor Yoon, a computer scientist who had found suspicious code in the Keldari gift technology, when all electronic devices simultaneously broadcast the same message. People of Earth, your resources are now property of the Keldari Imperium. Resistance will result in immediate punishment. Compliance will be rewarded with survival. Seconds later, the Keldari weapon systems activated, not to destroy Earth, that would damage the resources they wanted, but to eliminate military capabilities and government control centers. Precision strikes hit Pentagon, Beijing's Central Military Commission, Moscow's Ministry of Defense, and military bases worldwide. Park pulled over and watched as distant explosions lit up the horizon. Seoul's military headquarters was gone. Fighter jets scrambled but were swatted from the sky by energy weapons that moved faster than anything Earth's militaries had ever encountered. He tried calling several numbers, but networks were either jammed or destroyed. He drove to his university lab instead, finding it in chaos. Students and faculty were running, gathering whatever they could. "Park, thank goodness," Professor Yoon called out, carrying hard drives and equipment. "I was hoping you'd come here." "We need to leave the city," Park said. "They'll establish control centers in major urban areas first." As they loaded equipment into Park's car, Colonel Kim arrived with 4 military vehicles and a dozen soldiers. Despite her uniform being partially burnt and a bandage around her arm, she stood tall and focused. "Dr. Park," she said, "your warnings about the Keldari were correct. I've been authorized to evacuate key scientific personnel to secure locations." "Authorized by whom?" Park asked. "What remains of our command structure?" she replied grimly. "We have a facility in the mountains, hardened against detection. We've been preparing it since you first raised concerns." Within hours, their small convoy joined others carrying scientists, engineers, and military specialists. They traveled on back roads, avoiding main highways where Keldari ships were landing and deploying ground forces, tall, armored beings that moved with frightening speed and precision. Through the car radio, they heard reports of resistance being crushed. The American carrier groups in the Pacific were gone. Europe's coordinated NATO response had failed within hours. China's massive army was in disarray after their command structure was decapitated. "They studied us," Colonel Kim said as they drove through a mountain pass. "While we were admiring their gifts, they were mapping our defenses and planning our destruction." The mountain facility was built into the rock itself, with entrances disguised as natural formations. Inside, Park found dozens of people setting up equipment, a mix of military personnel and civilians from various fields. "We have enough supplies for 2 years," Colonel Kim explained. "Power generation, water recycling, hydroponic farms. We can sustain about 200 people." "What's the plan?" Park asked. "We can't hide forever." "No," Kim agreed. "We study them, learn their weaknesses, build a resistance. It will take time." From the communication center, they watched satellite feeds showing Keldari ships landing in cities worldwide. Strange structures began to rise, processing centers for Earth's minerals and biological resources. Humans were being registered, sorted, and assigned labor duties. "They don't see us as equals," Park observed. "We're just another resource to exploit." "Then they've made a fatal mistake," Colonel Kim replied. "Because unlike minerals or water, we can fight back." As darkness fell on their first night in hiding, Park stood at a small window cut into the rock, looking at the stars. Somewhere up there, the Keldari homeworld continued its existence, unaware that they had just created their most determined enemy. Humanity would need time and patience, but one day they would strike back. Dr. Song's hands did not shake as she cut into the dead Keldari's tough skin. 10 years of practice had given her a surgeon's precision. The alien had died in a mining accident, a rare stroke of luck for the resistance. Getting Keldari biological samples was nearly impossible. The laboratory hidden beneath the ruins of Busan was cold and damp. Water dripped from the ceiling into carefully placed buckets. The resistance couldn't risk using much power, which might alert Keldari scanners to their presence. "Hand me the neural probe," Song whispered to her assistant, a young woman named Jin who had escaped from a Keldari labor camp 3 years ago. Jin passed the delicate instrument. It was made from modified Keldari technology, stolen piece by piece over years of careful resistance operations. Above them, the ruins of Busan served as a perfect cover. The once bustling port city had been largely abandoned after the invasion, deemed too damaged to be worth rebuilding by the Keldari. They preferred to construct their own efficient mining and processing facilities, rather than repurpose human cities. Song carefully inserted the probe into the Keldari's brainstem. The screen beside her lit up with neural pathway maps. She leaned forward, eyes widening. "There it is," she whispered. "Just as I suspected." Her communication device buzzed. She stripped off her gloves and pressed the accept button. Colonel Kim's face appeared on the small screen. "Monthly check-in," Kim said. Her face showed new scars since their last communication. "Any progress?" "Yes," Song replied, excitement breaking through her usual caution. "I've confirmed my theory about their neural pathways. The Keldari process electromagnetic waves as part of their basic sensory input. It's how they communicate with each other and their technology." "And how does this help us?" Kim asked. The colonel had aged considerably in the past decade. Fighting a guerrilla war against alien overlords had that effect. "It means we could potentially disrupt their entire command structure with the right frequency broadcast," Song explained. "Imagine if all their neural links were suddenly filled with static. They'd be blind, confused. Could it kill them? Possibly. I need more time to refine it." Kim nodded. "Keep working. We're running out of time and people." After the call ended, Song returned to her work. Outside the secure lab, the Resistance was facing its darkest days. Their numbers dwindled each year as people were captured or simply gave up. Some humans had even started cooperating with the Keldari, trading information about Resistance activities for better food and living conditions. 500 miles north, Captain Moon slipped through the shadows of a massive Keldari processing facility. He wore the gray uniform of a human supervisor, a position given to those who demonstrated efficiency in managing other human workers. The Keldari preferred to oversee operations from a distance, using humans to control humans whenever possible. Moon had spent 3 years earning the trust needed to receive this position. Now he finally had access to the facility's lower levels, where the primary data terminals were located. He passed 2 Keldari guards, keeping his eyes down as all humans were taught. Looking directly at a Keldari was considered an act of defiance, punishable by immediate disciplinary action. The guards paid him no attention. Just another obedient human going about his duties. The data terminal room was empty, as he'd hoped. The Keldari were creatures of strict routine. At this hour, they would be receiving their nutrient supplements in the upper levels. Moon pulled a small device from his boot, a data extractor created by Professor Yoon. He plugged it into the Keldari terminal, watching as alien symbols flashed across the screen. "Come on," he whispered, glancing at the door. He had 5 minutes at most before someone would come to check the terminals. The device beeped softly, indicating a successful download. Moon was about to remove it when a particular file caught his eye. It was heavily encrypted, marked with symbols he recognized as Keldari warning signs. Without thinking, he tapped to include it in the download. 3 minutes later, Moon was walking calmly back through the facility, the stolen data hidden safely in his boot. By morning, he would be halfway to the forest base, where he could transmit the findings to Resistance headquarters. In the central Resistance stronghold hidden deep in the mountains, Professor Yoon worked tirelessly on the latest piece of Keldari technology, a propulsion component from one of their smaller scout ships. The Resistance had managed to shoot it down in a rare victory 3 months ago. "The magnetic coupling is the key," she muttered to herself, adjusting her makeshift tools. Human technology was pitifully inadequate for working with Keldari components, but she had improvised. Behind her, a team of engineers watched carefully, learning everything they could. If Yoon died, her knowledge couldn't die with her. That was the Resistance's policy now. Knowledge sharing was mandatory. Too many experts had been lost in the early years. Their faster-than-light travel doesn't bend space the way our theoretical models suggested, Yoon explained as she worked. It creates a field that allows them to slip between dimensional layers, moving through what we might call subspace. One of the younger engineers raised his hand. "Could we replicate it?" "Not completely." "Not yet," Yoon admitted. "But I believe we can create a prototype that achieves perhaps 10% of their capability. Enough to reach orbit undetected." The secure communication system chimed. Yoon wiped her hands on her worn lab coat and accepted the incoming transmission. Captain Moon's face appeared, looking exhausted but excited. "Professor, I'm sending you files from the central database. You need to see this immediately." The data transfer took nearly an hour through their secure, low-bandwidth channel. When it finished, Hume began examining the files. Most contained typical information: Keldari shipping routes, resource processing statistics, useful but not revolutionary. Then she opened the heavily encrypted file. "This can't be right," she whispered, leaning closer to the screen. The file contained star charts marked with warning symbols. Entire systems were blackened out, marked as forbidden territory. And there were records, ship disappearances, garbled distress signals, and what appeared to be fragments of something the translator rendered as awakening threat. Yoon immediately contacted Colonel Kim and Dr. Song, requesting an emergency meeting of the resistance leadership. Within days, they had all reached the same conclusion. The mighty Keldari Imperium was running scared from something in the galaxy, something that even they, with all their advanced technology, feared. "They're not just conquerors," Colonel Kim said during the meeting. "They're refugees, in a sense, hiding behind the resources of conquered worlds." Dr. Song nodded. "This changes everything. If we can understand what they're afraid of, we might find their weakness," Captain Moon finished. Professor Yoon spread out the printouts of her findings. "These star charts show they've been systematically avoiding certain regions of space, and look at the timestamps. They've been running for over 300 years. For the first time in a decade, the resistance leaders allowed themselves to feel a spark of real hope. The Keldari were not invincible. They had enemies. They had fears. And soon, they would have one more enemy to fear, a humanity that had finally found its path to strike back." The mountain stronghold hummed with nervous energy. After 10 years of hiding, studying, and planning, the resistance was finally ready to strike. Deep inside the command center, carved from solid rock, the leadership gathered around a holographic display of the Keldari command vessel. Dr. Song stood at the front of the room, her black hair now streaked with gray. She held up a small, clear container filled with a glowing blue liquid. "This is our weapon," she said. "I call it the Silencer. It attacks the unique neural pathways of Keldari brains, disrupting their ability to process electromagnetic signals." Colonel Kim studied the container. "What exactly will it do to them?" "It will scramble their internal communications," Song explained. "They won't die, but they won't be able to coordinate or use their technology properly. Think of it as a temporary blindness that affects all their senses at once." "How temporary?" asked Captain Moon. "Approximately 6 hours," Song replied. "We'll have a small window to complete our mission." Captain Moon stepped forward and activated the holographic display. It showed the 3 small ships the Resistance had built in secret over the last 3 years. 3 teams, Moon said, each with a specific mission. Team 1 will deliver the Silencer virus to the ship's central air system. Team 2 will download the navigational data from their main computers. Team 3 will provide cover and ensure everyone gets out. Colonel Kim nodded thoughtfully. "The timing has to be perfect. All 3 teams must enter and exit within the 6-hour window." "What about their orbital defenses?" asked Major Han, who would lead Team 3. Professor Yoon smiled for the first time. "That's where nature helps us." She pulled up another display showing a meteor shower predicted to pass near Earth. "The Perseids will provide perfect cover. We've modified our ship's heat signatures to match the meteors. Their sensors should see us as just more space debris." The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the plan. After a decade of small victories and devastating setbacks, this would be their first major offensive against the Keldari. "If we fail," Colonel Kim said quietly, "they will track us back here. The entire resistance network will be compromised. And if we succeed," Captain Moon countered, "we'll have the information we need to truly fight back." Colonel Kim looked around the room at the faces of people who had given everything to the resistance. Some had lost families. All had lost their former lives. They deserved a chance to strike back. "Operation Prometheus launches in 3 days," she announced. "Prepare your teams." The resistance base transformed into a hive of activity. Engineers made final adjustments to the ships. Pilots ran countless simulations. Dr. Song prepared multiple samples of the silencer virus, teaching each team how to deploy it. On the night of the mission, Pilot Kang sat in the cockpit of Lid ship, running through pre-flight checks. At 32, he was one of the youngest pilots in the Resistance, but his natural skill had made him the clear choice to lead the mission. Before the invasion, he had been training to become a commercial airline pilot. Now he would become the first human to pilot a ship into space since the Keldari arrived. All systems operational, he reported. Stealth systems active. The three small ships sat in a hidden hangar built into the side of the mountain. Above them, a carefully camouflaged door was ready to open into the night sky. Colonel Kim's voice came through the communication system. All teams, final check. Team 1 ready, reported Dr. Song, who would personally deploy the virus. Team 2 ready, Captain Moon confirmed. Team 3 ready, said Major Han. Colonel Kim took a deep breath. Operation Prometheus is a go. Open the hangar doors. With a low rumble, the mountains seemed to split open. The three ships rose silently on their magnetic lifts, then shot upward into the night sky. Their dark hulls, covered with heat-absorbing materials, were nearly invisible against the darkness. Kang guided lead ship higher and higher, watching as the blue of Earth's atmosphere gradually darkened to the black of space. The Keldari orbital platforms loomed ahead, massive structures that controlled all traffic to and from the planet. Meteor shower beginning. Professor Yoon's voice came through the comm system from base. Adjust your approach vector to match incoming meteors. Kang altered course, bringing the small ship into the stream of meteors entering Earth's atmosphere. Around him, space lit up with streaks of light as rocks burned up in the atmosphere. Sensors show we're registering this debris, Kang reported, watching the ship's detection system. Keldari defense grid is not responding to us. The three ships glided through the meteor shower, using the natural phenomenon as perfect cover. Ahead loomed their target, the massive Keldari command vessel that served as the headquarters for Earth operations. Target in visual range, Kang announced, preparing for docking sequence. The ship was enormous, nearly 2 miles long, with a gleaming hull that shifted colors like oil on water. Kang guided lead ship toward a maintenance airlock on the vessel's underside, a spot identified by Resistance spies as having minimal security. Docking in 3, 2, 1. The ship shuddered slightly as magnetic clamps engaged with the Keldari vessel. A soft hiss indicated a successful seal. Kang exchanged looks with Dr. Song, who sat ready with her equipment. "We're in," he said simply. The other two ships docked at different points around the massive vessel. Team members in specially designed stealth suits exited their ships and entered the Keldari command vessel. Dr. Song moved quickly through the alien corridors, following memorized maps based on intelligence gathered over years. 2 Resistance fighters accompanied her, weapons ready. They encountered no Keldari in the maintenance tunnels, another piece of intelligence that proved accurate. The aliens considered their orbital vessels completely secure and rarely patrolled these areas. They reached the Central Air Processing Unit, a massive chamber filled with humming machinery. Dr. Song carefully attached the canister containing the silencer virus to the main intake valve. Virus deployment in 3, 2, 1. She pressed the release button. The blue liquid vaporized instantly, being sucked into the air system. It's done. The virus will reach all sections within 15 minutes. Meanwhile, Captain Moon and Team 2 had reached the Navigational Control Center. Unlike the maintenance tunnels, this area was staffed by 4 Keldari technicians. Moon and his team watched from a hidden position, waiting for the virus to take effect. Suddenly, one of the Keldari operators began to twitch. It stood up, its 4 arms moving erratically. Then it collapsed to the floor. The others followed within seconds, their bodies convulsing briefly before lying still but breathing. "The virus works," Moon whispered. "Move in." Team 2 rushed the control center. Moon went straight to the main terminal and connected Professor Yoon's data extraction device. the screen filled with Keldari symbols and star maps. Downloading navigational data, he reported through his comm unit. Estimated time: 4 minutes. Major Han and Team 3 have positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the ship, ready to provide cover for the withdrawal. So far, they had encountered only confused and incapacitated Keldari. All sections report Keldari are neutralized, Han confirmed. We have control of the ship. The operation was proceeding perfectly, until a separate Keldari vessel docked with the command ship. This hadn't been in their intelligence. Unscheduled docking detected, Han reported urgently. Unknown number of Keldari boarding from a patrol ship. They must have been outside when the virus deployed. How long until data download is complete? Colonel Kim asked from the base. 2 more minutes, Moon replied. Team 3, delay them, Kim ordered. Everyone else, prepare for emergency extraction. Major Han positioned her team near the docking point. They could hear the Keldari patrol entering the ship, their heavy footsteps echoing through the corridors. Download complete, Moon finally reported. Team 2 heading for extraction. The teams converged on their ships, moving as fast as they dared. Behind them, the sounds of confused Keldari grew louder. Some had managed to activate emergency breathing systems that filtered out the virus. All 3 teams reached their ships and disengaged from the command vessel. Kang piloted lead ship away at maximum speed, no longer concerned about stealth. We're clear, he reported, heading home. But as the ships approached Earth, the long-range sensors detected a new threat. Multiple ships entering the solar system, Professor Yoon reported, her voice tight with concern. Keldari battleships, a lot of them. Colonel Kim's face appeared on the communication screen, her expression grave. Get back here now. We have the information we need. It's time for the next phase. As Kang guided the ship back toward Earth, he caught a glimpse of the incoming Keldari fleet. Dozens of massive warships, far more than had ever been stationed in Earth's system before. They know, Kang whispered to himself. They know we've hit them. For the first time in 10 years, humanity had struck a meaningful blow against their oppressors. But the Keldari response was already on its way, and it would be merciless. The morning sun had just begun to peek over the horizon when the signal went out. Across Earth, in mines, factories, and processing centers, humans pressed hidden buttons on devices they had secretly built and stored for this moment. These small transmitters activated simultaneously, broadcasting the neural disrupting signal that Dr. Song had perfected. In the massive Keldari mining facility outside what was once Pyongyang, Commander Han watched her timer count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The effect was immediate. The Keldari overseers began to twitch and stumble. Some grabbed their heads with all 4 arms, dropping to their knees. Others simply collapsed. The human workers who had been warned to expect this continued their tasks for a few moments, then slowly put down their tools and looked to their hidden resistance leaders. Now, Han shouted, throwing off her worker's uniform to reveal combat gear underneath. Similar transformations happened throughout the facility as hidden resistance fighters emerged from the ranks of ordinary workers. Han led her team straight to the control center. The few Keldari who had managed to protect themselves with breathing filters were quickly overwhelmed by the well-trained resistance fighters. Years of careful planning and secret training had prepared them for this moment. Secure the weapons systems, Han ordered as they entered the main control room. A group of resistance engineers immediately began working on the Keldari computer terminals. "Commander, we have access," reported one of the engineers after several tense minutes. "The defensive systems are under our control." Han smiled for the first time in what felt like years. "Turn them around. Target any Keldari ships that try to land reinforcements." Outside, chaos spread across the compound. Human workers were freeing others from the barracks, arming themselves with whatever they could find. Some had actual weapons that had been smuggled in piece by piece over months. Others used tools from their workstations. Their numbers were overwhelming. For every Keldari overseer, There were 100 humans. Han's communication device buzzed. It was Colonel Kim from Central Command. "Status report," Kim demanded. "Pyongyang Processing Center is secure," Han replied. "We've taken control of their defensive systems and are arming the workers." "Excellent. Similar reports are coming in from facilities worldwide. The neural disruptor worked even better than we hoped." Han looked at the facility's exterior cameras. Columns of freed human workers were now moving through the compounds, helping others and securing buildings. After a decade of oppression, their faces showed a mixture of disbelief and fierce joy. "What about the incoming Keldari fleet?" Han asked. "Captain Choi is handling that," Kim replied. "Stay focused on securing your sector." High above Earth, Captain Choi stood on the bridge of a captured Keldari vessel. It had taken the Resistance 3 years to secretly take control of 6 Keldari ships. They had killed the crews and replaced them with human pilots and engineers who had studied Keldari technology. The ships remained in their usual patrol patterns, sending normal communications to maintain their cover. Now, as the Keldari reinforcement fleet approached, those 6 ships represented humanity's thin line of defense in space. "They're approaching in standard attack formation," reported Choi's sensor officer. 23 battleships, multiple support vessels. Choi studied the tactical display. The Keldari didn't expect any resistance in orbit. They believed they were simply responding to an internal problem on Earth. "Move into position," Choi ordered. "Target their command ships first. Remember, we only get one surprise attack." The 6 human-controlled ships broke from their patrol routes and formed a new formation. The incoming Keldari fleet didn't react immediately. They still thought these were friendly vessels. "All ships, fire on my mark," Choi said calmly. 3, 2, 1, fire. 6 captured Keldari warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously, targeting the lead vessels of the incoming fleet. The Keldari, completely unprepared for an attack from what they thought were their own ships, took devastating hits. "Direct hits on 3 command vessels," reported the weapons officer. "They're breaking formation." The space battle that followed was chaotic. The Keldari had superior numbers, but they were confused and disorganized. Their expected easy mission to suppress a human uprising had turned into an ambush. Choi's ships moved aggressively, using their intimate knowledge of Keldari tactics against them. 2 more enemy ships disabled. The sensor officer called out, "They're starting to withdraw." Choi could hardly believe what her screens were showing. The massive Keldari fleet was actually retreating, pulling back to regroup beyond the moon. "They're running," she said softly. Then, more confidently into her comm, "Colonel Kim, the Keldari fleet is retreating. I repeat, they're retreating. We've won the first battle." In the mountain headquarters, Colonel Kim allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Reports were flooding in from around the world. The neural disruptor had worked everywhere it had been deployed. Human resistance cells had successfully taken control of most major Keldari facilities. The few places where Keldari had managed to maintain control were now isolated and under siege. "We've done it," Dr. Song said, standing beside Kim. "The first phase worked perfectly." "Now for the hard part," Kim replied. "We've surprised them, but they'll be back, and in greater numbers." Professor Yoon burst into the command center, clutching data tablets. Her hair was disheveled and her eyes were wide with excitement. "I've finished analyzing the navigational data from the command ship," she announced. "We found it. The Keldari homeworld." The room fell silent as Yoon projected a star map onto the main screen. It showed hundreds of star systems, with one pulsing red near the center. "That's their home system," Yoon explained. "And these," she highlighted a dozen other systems, "are worlds of other species they've conquered." Dr. Park, who had been quiet during the operation, studying the incoming data, suddenly stood up. He looked 10 years younger, energized by what he was seeing. "These conquered worlds," he said, pointing to the map, "some of them have been under Keldari control for centuries, others for just a few decades. They've been building an empire by subjugating any intelligent species they encounter. Colonel Kim studied the star charts carefully, just like they did to us. Exactly, Park nodded. But now we have something none of those other species had. We have the location of every world in their empire. And we have a weapon that specifically targets Keldari biology. The implication hung in the air. For a moment, no one spoke, considering the possibilities. Then perhaps, Park finally said, his eyes gleaming with hope for the first time in 10 years, those other conquered species would be interested in joining our cause. Colonel Kim turned to Captain Choi on the communication screen. How quickly can you prepare the captured ships for long-range travel? With Professor Yoon's modifications to their FTL drives, we could reach the closest of these systems in about 3 weeks, Choi replied. And the neural disruptor? Kim asked Dr. Song. We can produce enough for multiple ships, Song confirmed. It's relatively simple to manufacture now that we have the formula perfected. Kim looked around the room at the resistance leaders who had fought alongside her for a decade. They had just achieved what had seemed impossible. They had taken back Earth. But maintaining their freedom would require more than just defending their home planet. Prepare a diplomatic mission, Kim ordered. We're going to find allies. Outside the mountain base, humans across the planet were emerging from Keldari facilities, blinking in the sunlight of their first day of freedom. Many were weeping. Others stood in shocked silence. Some were already organizing, setting up defenses and distributing food and supplies. The Keldari would return. Everyone knew that. But for the first time in 10 years, humans looked to the sky not with fear, but with determination. The counter-invasion had begun, and humanity would not stop at merely reclaiming Earth. They were taking the fight to the stars. The journey to the Talon homeworld took exactly 23 days in the modified Keldari ships. Captain Choi had pushed the engines beyond their safety limits, knowing that every day mattered. Earth's defenses were strong but temporary. If they couldn't find allies before the Keldari regrouped, humanity's victory would be short-lived. Dr. Song stood on the bridge as they approached the crystalline planet. It glittered like a jewel against the blackness of space, its surface covered with structures that reflected starlight in dazzling patterns. It's beautiful, Song whispered. And heavily guarded, noted Colonel Kim, pointing to the Keldari defense platforms orbiting the planet. The Talon must be valuable to them. Their small fleet of 6 ships sent the prepared message, a simple signal using the Keldari's own communication codes, requesting landing permission. They had debated revealing themselves immediately as humans, but decided that surprise might be their best advantage. The Keldari controllers granted permission, assuming they were dealing with a routine patrol. When the ships landed and humans emerged instead of Keldari, the local guards were too shocked to react immediately. By the time they recovered, Dr. Song had already deployed the neural disruptor, incapacitating them. Meeting the Talon was unlike anything the humans had prepared for. The crystalline beings communicated through light pulses that emanated from their translucent bodies. Professor Yoon's translation devices struggled to keep up. The Talon Council, 7 tall crystal figures seated in a circular chamber, regarded the human delegation with what seemed like suspicion, though it was hard to read emotions on their faceted faces. We understand your caution, Dr. Song said, stepping forward. But we bring proof of the Keldari's vulnerability, and we offer alliance, not subjugation. She explained how humanity had fought back and temporarily freed Earth. She demonstrated the neural disruptor technology, showing how it specifically targeted Keldari biology without harming other species. We seek to build a coalition, Colonel Kim added. Together, we can free all worlds from Keldari rule. The Talon were silent for a long moment, their bodies pulsing with internal light. Finally, their leader spoke, the translation coming through in a mechanical voice. The Keldari have ruled our world for 800 of your years. Many of us no longer remember freedom. How can we trust that you will not become new masters? Dr. Park stepped forward. We were slaves for only 10 years, and it nearly broke us. We cannot imagine your suffering over centuries. We do not wish to rule. We wish to help all species stand as equals. The Talon deliberated for 3 days, while the human delegation waited anxiously. Finally, they agreed to join the fight, but with conditions. They would maintain control of their own ships and warriors. This was not submission to humanity, but a partnership. Colonel Kim readily agreed. This is exactly what we hoped for. True allies, not subjects. With the Talon's support, approaching other enslaved worlds became easier. Each success built momentum. The Madar, 6-limbed beings with exceptional biological science skills, joined next. They had been developing their own resistance for decades and eagerly adopted Dr. Song's neural disruptor technology, improving it further. The Vosh, a species of strategic geniuses with natural mathematical abilities, brought their tactical expertise. Their leaders immediately began analyzing Keldari fleet movements and defensive positions, identifying weaknesses the coalition could exploit. Within 6 months, what became known as the Liberation Front included representatives from 15 formerly enslaved species. Each brought unique abilities and technologies. Together, they were far stronger than any one species could be alone. The Keldari responded with brutal force, destroying entire settlements suspected of harboring resistance fighters. But these actions only strengthened resolve across the liberated worlds. The final battle was inevitable. The combined fleet of the Liberation Front, nearly 300 ships of various designs and origins, approached the Keldari throne world. At the center of their formation flew the human vanguard, 6 original captured ships now joined by a dozen more. Commander Han stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, surveying the massive Keldari defense grid ahead. This was the heart of their empire, protected by thousands of ships and orbital platforms. All ships move into attack formation, Han ordered. Remember the plan. We target their communication nodes first, then deploy the neural disruptor. The battle erupted with blinding intensity. Keldari defenders fought with desperate ferocity, knowing they were making their last stand. Liberation Front ships attacked in coordinated waves, using tactics developed by the Vosh that confused and separated Keldari battle groups. "They're falling back to their inner defenses," reported Lieutenant Ju as their fleet pushed forward through the first defensive ring. "The neural disruptor is working." Meanwhile, a small stealth ship carrying Dr. Park and a team of specialists had slipped through the chaos of battle. They docked with the Keldari Central Archives, a massive space station containing the collected knowledge of their civilization. Park's team quickly overcame the confused guards and gained access to the central database. As a scientist, Park had insisted on this mission despite the danger. He believed understanding the Keldari was as important as defeating them. As he searched through the ancient records, Park's expression changed from concentration to horror. "This can't be right," he muttered, checking the translations again. He opened an emergency channel to Colonel Kim. "I found something in their historical archives. The Keldari have been running for centuries. According to these records, they awakened something in the galactic core during early exploration, some kind of ancient machine intelligence that consumes civilizations." Kim's voice came back, partially obscured by battle communications. "Are you certain? This could be propaganda." "The records are detailed. Star systems destroyed. Entire species eliminated. The Keldari began conquering others not just for resources, but to build the buffer between themselves and this entity. They call it the Devourer." The battle raged for hours. Gradually, the Liberation Front gained the upper hand. The neural disruptor, deployed throughout the Keldari defense grid, rendered their coordinated response impossible. Ship by ship, platform by platform, the defenders fell back. Finally, a signal came from the Keldari Supreme Command. They wished to surrender. Colonel Kim, Commander Han, and representatives from each species of the Liberation Front met with the Keldari leadership in their grand hall. The once proud conquerors seemed diminished, their iridescent skin dull, their postures submissive. "You have defeated us," the Keldari Supreme Commander acknowledged. "We surrender our empire to your coalition. "We don't want your empire," Kim replied. "We want freedom for all species." The Keldari leader hesitated, then confirmed Dr. Park's discovery. "We sought to build strength through conquest. We believed only a unified galaxy under our control could survive what's coming. The devourer has already consumed 1,000 worlds. It will reach this sector within 50 years. A hush fell over the gathering as the implications became clear. The Liberation Front had won its freedom, but now faced a greater threat. In the months that followed, a new galactic alliance formed. The Keldari, stripped of their imperial status, contributed their knowledge and technology. Research teams from all species focused on understanding and countering the approaching threat from the galactic core. 1 year after the final battle, General Kim, formerly Colonel, stood on the observation deck of Earth's new orbital defense station. Below, the rebuilt cities of humanity glowed in the night. Earth was healing, its people free and now part of something greater than they had ever imagined. Beside her stood Dr. Park, looking much older than his years, but with clear purpose in his eyes. "The coalition is working," Kim said. "The Madar have already improved our medical technology. The Vox are helping design new defense systems. Even the Keldari are contributing." Park nodded, united by a common enemy more terrible than any of us could have been to each other. "Do you think we can stop it? This devourer?" Park gazed at the stars. "I don't know, but I know we couldn't have faced it alone. Perhaps that's the irony. The Keldari tried to unite the galaxy through force, but only succeeded in creating the very alliance that might actually save us all." Kim smiled slightly. "We struck back against our oppressors, but the real battle may just be beginning." Below them, humanity continued its work, no longer alone in the universe, no longer conquered, but now facing a greater challenge as part of a united front of free species. The story of resistance had become the story of survival, not just for humans, but for all sentient life.